Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act, it's noteworthy that the Article 149(1) of the Constitution provides as follows, and I quote, "Within 14 days after vacancy in the office of the Deputy President arises, the President shall nominate a person to fill the vacancy, and the National Assembly shall vote on the nomination within 60 days after receiving it." From a reading of Article 149(1) of the Constitution, it's expressly provided that the National Assembly shall vote on the nomination within 60 days after receiving it. The drafters of the Constitution distinguish the language used in Article 149(1) of the Constitution by expressly providing that the House is required to vote and not approve the nomination. Indeed, this is to be distinguished from the provisions of Article 132(4) of the Constitution, which provides that the President shall nominate and, with the approval of the National Assembly, appoint and may dismiss the Cabinet Secretaries in accordance with Article 152, the Attorney General in accordance with Article 156, the Secretary of the Cabinet in accordance with Article 154, Principal Secretaries in accordance with Article 155, and High Commissioners, Ambassadors, and Diplomatic and Consular Representatives. Members at the bar, take the nearest seats. Honourable members, in this regard, for all the state officers that I have just highlighted, the House is required to approve their nomination by the President. However, in respect to the Deputy President, Article 149(1) of the Constitution expressly provides that the House is required to vote on the nomination. It is noteworthy that the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act applies where an appointment under the Constitution or any other law requires an approval of the House. Consequently, noting Article 149(1) of the Constitution requires the House to take a vote on the nomination, the approval process envisaged under the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act does not apply in this case. The House will therefore adopt the precedent it has set on this matter, and this settles that point. Honourable members, the second issue was whether the House shall conduct public participation in voting on the nomination under Article 149(1) of the Constitution. As stated earlier, Article 149(1) of the Constitution requires the House to take a vote on the nomination of Professor Kithure Kindiki, EGH, to fill the vacancy in the office of the Deputy President, which is essentially an election. Honourable members, you will recall that the practice of the House, whenever it is confronted with an obligation to vote on the matter as relates to an election, the instances include election of the Speaker, the Deputy Speaker, under Articles 106 of the Constitution, the members of the East African Legislative Assembly and the Pan-African Parliament, for which the House is required to vote on nominations of members to hold such positions. The practice of the House in these instances is that the House has always proceeded directly to vote without public participation. To this end, to the extent that Article 149(1) of the Constitution contemplates the House to vote upon receiving the nomination, the requirement for public participation is not applicable in this case. This settles the second issue. Honourable members, on the third issue relating to whether members shall be allowed to debate on the nomination, is noteworthy that having determined the vote contemplated under Article 149(1) of the Constitution is an election, no debate arises on a matter of election. Indeed, you will recall that in the case of the election of a Speaker of this House and the members of the East African Legislative Assembly, no debate arises. This settles that third issue. The fourth issue, honourable members, is the issue on timelines envisaged under Article 149(1) of the Constitution. You will observe that the Article 149 of the Constitution defines the period within which the President is required to nominate a person to fill the vacancy in the office of the President. office of the Deputy President, which is within 14 days after vacancy in the office of the Deputy President arises. The National Assembly is then required to vote on the nomination within 60 days after receiving it. Honorable members, from the foregoing, Article 149(1) of the Constitution defines the maximum period within which the President and the National Assembly are required to act. To this end, the President can nominate a person to fill the vacancy from the first day of the vacancy arises up to the 14th day. On its part, the National Assembly is required to vote on any day from the first day it receives a nomination up to the 60th day after receipt of the nomination. Consequently, the nomination of Professor Kithure Kindiki, EGH, and the vote the House is required to take today on the nomination is within the constitutional timeline provided for in Article 149(1) of the Constitution. This settles that fourth issue. The fifth and final issue that was raised was guidance on the threshold for voting under Article 149 of the Constitution. It is noteworthy that Article 149(1) of the Constitution has not defined or provided for the threshold for voting for the nomination of a person to fill the vacancy of the office of the Deputy President. Article 122(1) of the Constitution provides that, except as otherwise provided in the Constitution, any question proposed for decision in either House of Parliament shall be determined by a majority of the members in that House present and voting. Consequently, the threshold for voting on the nomination of Professor Kithure Kindiki, EGH, is a majority of the members in this House present and voting, as provided for in Article 122(1) of the Constitution. That final issue is also settled. Honorable members, in summary, therefore, I wish to guide the House as follows. One, that Article 149 of the Constitution requires the House to take a vote on the nomination of Professor Kithure Kindiki, EGH, to fill the vacancy in the office of the Deputy President. Two, and in this regard, the House will be guided by its previous precedents whenever it's called upon to take a vote on a matter as relates to the election of the Speaker, the Deputy Speaker, and members of IALA and Pan-African Parliament. Three, that no debate arises on a matter that the House is required to take a vote. Four, that the nomination of Professor Kithure Kindiki, EGH, and the vote the House is required to take on the nomination is within the constitutional timeline provided for in Article 149(1) of the Constitution. Five, that the House Business Committee has resolved that the vote contemplated under Article 149(1) of the Constitution be taken today during this sitting of the House. Six, that the threshold for voting on the nomination of Professor Kithure Kindiki, EGH, is a majority of the members in the House present and voting as provided for in Article 122(1) of the Constitution. The House is therefore accordingly guided and may now proceed to take the vote. Clerk, can you ring the division bell for 5 minutes? Yes, Wanjala. Wanjala?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. As you have rightly said, that we will take a vote. But, Mr. Speaker, this House recognizes three types of voting. There is acclamation, there is direct digital voting, and then there is a vote we take by reading out the names.
Roll call.
Roll call, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
And, Mr. Speaker, when I sit in this House, we are in concurrence that Professor Kindiki is the man, is the Deputy President. Why don't we just, so that we go home, some of us want to take flights, why don't we just vote by acclamation?
Roko.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Article 149, Protect me, Mr. Speaker.
Go on, I'm listening.
Article 149 of our Constitution, Section 1, as you have rightly pointed, that the National Assembly shall vote on the nomination of the nominated Deputy President. Mr. Speaker, the mood of the House is that there is no objection whatsoever as far as nomination of Professor Kindiki is concerned. Yes, we are ready with our cans to vote electronically, but Mr. Speaker, we seek your ruling and indulgence so that we can go by acclamation and we solve the matter once and for all. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order, honorable members. Yes, Senior Counsel. Senior Counsel Otiende. Give Otiende a moment.
Thank you. Honorable Speaker, honorable members, I know this is a serious moment in history. It is also a constitutional moment. I wholly agree with the Honorable Wanjala, Honorable Ruku, in terms of the mood of the House. However, Mr. Speaker, there are things we need to do for the record, not just for ourselves. Even as we speak, this whole process is being challenged in court. We need not allow any gap, because so far, from the start to now, we have not allowed any gap. Let us not be in a rush to allow a gap. I beseech members, let us vote electronically. It does not take time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, let's not open debate on this. Electronic voting takes less than 5 minutes. I'm sure you know this. So since the House is nearly full, let's have the division bell rung for just 5 minutes. Then we draw the bar, you log in, and we call out the vote. And the majority leader and minority leader nominate one person each to act as tellers. Then with those who don't have cards, I said, you record at the table with the clerks.
You're watching live pictures from the National Assembly, where members of parliament are preparing to vote for the nomination of Professor Kindiki to fill the vacancy in the Deputy President's office. Professor Kindiki is currently serving as the Cabinet Secretary for Interior and National Administration, a role he has held since October 2022, with a brief hiatus between the 11th July 2024 and 8th of August 2024, when the President dissolved his cabinet. As the Cabinet Secretary for Interior and National Administration, Honorable Kindiki has led and overseen achievement of various milestones and reforms, including the Police Equipment Modernization Program, significantly enhancing the capabilities of Kenya's security services, finalization of a strategic framework to commence implementation of police reforms recommended by the Honorable Justice, as well as abolishment of the previous vetting processes for issuance of national identity cards, recognition of minority groups and stateless communities, ensuring they receive Kenyan citizenship and associated rights, and operationalization of the Public Benefit Organizations Act. These are some of the achievements of Professor Kindiki as the Cabinet Secretary for Interior. Prior to his appointment to the Cabinet, Professor Kindiki served as he also served as the Deputy Speaker of the Senate, as well as the Majority Party's role as Senate Majority Leader. He spearheaded the legislative agenda of the Majority Party in the Senate and served as the leader of the Majority Party. As Senate Deputy Speaker, Professor Kindiki deputized the Senate Speaker in presiding over sittings and debates in the House of Senate and enforcing rules of procedure and parliamentary processes. Honorable Kindiki also conducted oversight roles governance of counties and participated in lawmaking on matters affecting counties. As an advocate of the High Court of Kenya with Legal Action Union, the Intergovernmental Authority on Development IGAD, the United Nations, and UN specialized agencies such as the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees UNHCR and United Nations Development Program UNDP, and practice as defense counsel at the International Criminal Court at The Hague. Honorable Kindiki has also taught law and held various administrative positions at Moi University School of Law and the University of Nairobi School of Law. He began his career as an assistant lecturer in law at Moi University immediately upon graduating with an undergraduate degree in law. He then joined the University of Nairobi as a lecturer after graduating with a PhD in international law, where he quickly rose to the head of Department of Public Law at the young age of 33 years, and then to position of Associate Dean at the age of 35. Professor Kindiki was later promoted to the post of Associate Professor of Law at Kenyatta University. He has authored 35 publications, including books, book chapters, and articles in local and international peer-reviewed journals. Honorable Kindiki holds a Bachelor of Law degree from Moi University, a postgraduate diploma in law from the Kenya School of Law, a Master's of Law degree, and a doctorate in international law from the University of Pretoria in South Africa. His professional affiliations include membership of the Academic Council on the United Nations System, the International Association for the Study on Forced Migration, the International Commission of Juries, the East African Law Society, and the Law Society of Kenya, LSK.
Take your seats. Sergeant, you may now draw the bar. Close the bar, sorry.